Excellencies, dear colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bonjour, bon après-midi ou bonsoir. To who is with us on Zoom and who is watching this video of this event later on. Cet événement a lieu dans 2 langues et vous avez sur la plateforme Zoom la possibilité de choisir l'option interprétation simultanée. This event is held both in English and French, and you have a little icon allowing you to activate simultaneous interpretation. It's a little globe that you have at the bottom. You should have at the bottom of the screen. The music you have just heard is the Symphony for Water and Peace that our colleagues from the Geneva Water Hub have the habit to play when launching their events. My name is Diana Rizzolio. I am the coordinator of the Geneva Environment Network, the oldest of the Geneva thematic platforms, aiming at creating synergies among the numerous actors of International Geneva working on these topics. It is a real pleasure to have been invited to moderate this event of the Geneva Peace Week on a special day, as today we celebrate the International Day for Preventing the Exploitation of the Environment in War and Armed Conflict. And the Geneva Peace Week has, you must have noticed, dedicated this full day to the environmental peace building thematic. This event is being recorded and the recording will be made available on the website by the organizers. The intergenerational dialogue on the role of water in environmental peace building we are now launching is co-organized by 4 institutions. The Geneva Water Hub, a global center hosted at the University of Geneva, another of the thematic platform on International Geneva specialized in hydropolitics toward peace and security. It is also being hosted by the International Secretariat for Water, based in Montreal, Canada, by the Environmental Peacebuilding Association, supporting the growing network of professionals active in environmental peacebuilding, and finally by the World Youth Parliament for Water. We have representatives of all these institutions joining today's panel. The event will highlight the role of water as an instrument of peace and how young generations from local communities drive peace and cooperation. This is why we will have for each session of this event a young activist joining a senior experienced expert. Let me introduce you to all the speakers. For the opening of this panel today, we have the pleasure to welcome the Director General of the Geneva Water Hub, François Mingère. Before creating the Water Hub, François was leading the Swiss Development Corporation Global Water Program. He was awarded the title of Swiss Special Envoy for Water and given the responsibility for the creation and development of the Geneva Water Hub. We will also hear a welcome message from the Youth Program Coordinator of the International Secretariat for Water, Laurie Fourneau. We will then hold 2 dialogues between a senior community leader and a young expert related to the use of water in peace-building strategies, both in South America and in West Africa. These sessions will highlight the positive role of young people in the recovery phase of societies by providing concrete examples on their commitment. The first session on South America will focus on the impacts of dams on local populations and youth mobilization. For this session, we have with us from the South American continent, Joyce Mendes, member of the Paraguayan Youth Network for Water. Joyce is a techno-xamanist and social entrepreneur working on the water energy food nexus and transboundary cooperation. She's a member of the World Youth Parliament for Water. We have also with us Alvaro Umaña, who was the first Costa Rica's Minister of Energy and Environment. Alvaro was also the vice chair of the high-level panel on water and peace. He's a renewed expert who presently works as part of the Hub for the Americas of the Global Observatory on Water and Peace. Nous aurons un deuxième segment sur l'Afrique de l'Ouest qui abordera la question de l'accès à l'eau en temps de crise et réalisation de l'objectif de développement durable numéro 6 dédié à l'eau, donc à garantir à toutes et tous l'accès à l'eau et à l'assainissement. Pour cette session, notre jeune représentant est Flamé Ayafor Yaovi Ahmedzapé, très actif sur les questions de l'eau et de développement durable. Et Flamé a notamment dirigé la zone Afrique du Parlement national des jeunes pour l'eau du Togo. Nous avons aussi un expert un plus senior, Jean Bosco, directeur général d'Eau Vive International, une association burkinabé. And for the closing of this event, we'll also have a duo of a young researcher and a senior expert of fame. The young expert is Quentin Parent, who is doing a 10-month internship at the Geneva Water Hub. And our leading expert is Karl Bruch, the director of the international programs at the Environmental Law Institute and the founding president of the Environmental Peacebuilding Association. Before I give the floor to Francois for the opening, let me thank the Geneva Water Hub team operating behind the scenes, and particularly Mara Tignano, who will also be operating and serve as backup in case one of us loses her connection. We have some time constraints, and I will have the difficult task also to remind our panelists that we are running with time. I'm now turning to François Mingère, General Director of the Geneva Water Hub, for his opening remarks. François va s'exprimer en français. Over to you, François.
Merci, Diana. Chers participants, vous êtes 80 à peu près actuellement. Chers participants, sans eau douce, il n'y a pas de santé publique, pas de sécurité alimentaire, pas d'industrie, pas de développement durable, pas de vie. Depuis son origine, c'est toujours la même quantité d'eau qui circule et se recycle en permanence. Mais la réserve d'eau douce que ce cycle met à disposition est actuellement sous grande tension, par un développement de plus en plus assoiffé, un développement de plus en plus pollueur. De plus, le changement climatique accroît l'instabilité. On est toujours entre inondations et sécheresse, et ceci dans les mêmes régions. Depuis plusieurs années, le World Economic Forum positionne une crise de l'eau dans les premiers risques majeurs au niveau mondial. Les professionnels de l'eau, des scientifiques, des politiques signalent qu'une crise de l'eau est imminente. La rareté de l'eau, en interagissant avec des facteurs sociaux, économiques et environnementaux, est un facteur de déstabilisation et de fragilité. Mais l'accès à l'eau, si elle est certes une source de conflit, est aussi un puissant vecteur de coopération et de paix. C'est dans cette vision positive que s'inscrit le Geneva Water Hub. C'est avec cette vision que nous portons l'hydrodiplomatie et l'hydropolitique. C'est un combat à long terme et il est très important que les générations futures le portent et contribuent à radicalement le faire progresser. En ce sens, le Geneva Water Hub met un accent particulier sur la recherche et la formation, mais est aussi engagé et a engagé un dialogue avec des partenaires, des jeunes leaders, comme c'est le cas du Parlement mondial sur l'eau, du Parlement européen sur l'eau, des jeunes, ainsi que le Secrétariat international de l'eau. Nous engageons un dialogue où, d'une part, il faut apprendre de l'histoire, comprendre la réalité, mais aussi questionner l'héritage. Aujourd'hui, notre dialogue intergénérationnel, comme l'a mentionné Diana, portera sur deux aspects clés. L'impact des grandes infrastructures sur les populations locales. Ce n'est pas une question nouvelle, il y a 40 ans qu'on en parle, mais c'est une situation de plus en plus prégnante. Actuellement, dans le monde, on a plus de 7000 grands barrages, mais ils sont construits actuellement et ils sont planifiés 3700, donc plus de la moitié. On s'imagine les tensions et les difficultés autour de telles infrastructures et ce rush sur ces grandes infrastructures. Le deuxième dialogue portera sur la réalisation de l'ODD 6, sur l'eau dans les situations de crise qui sont multifactorielles, que l'on vit actuellement. Crise sanitaire, crise sécuritaire, crise sociale, crise économique, tout ça se superpose. Et puis le mot de conclusion sera porté par notre partenaire, la Peacebuilding Association, partenaire de cette session, et puis le mot aussi qui sera porté par Quentin Parent, qui est notre plus jeune de notre équipe du Geneva Water Hub. Je vous souhaite une très bonne session.
Merci François. We will now hear a pre-recorded message from Laurie Fourneau of the International Secretariat for Water. Mara, over to you. We are Operator, we are missing the sound.
Jouer un rôle central dans la définition de notre vivre ensemble. Et le SIE s'efforce de faciliter et supporter cette contribution des jeunes dans le secteur de l'eau. Que ce soit localement, grâce à un projet comme Ton futur, ton climat, au Bénin, au Burkina Faso et au Togo, projet qui renforce les capacités des jeunes agriculteurs pour adopter des pratiques plus résilientes au changement climatique, freinant par le fait même la migration des jeunes et l'enrôlement dans des groupes terroristes. Ou que ce soit à travers la mobilisation des jeunes dans le mouvement Blue Peace, développant par exemple des outils d'analyse de grands bassins par les jeunes, l'établissement de dialogues transfrontaliers entre les jeunes. Toutes ces expériences nous ont permis de démontrer que les jeunes peuvent être des catalyseurs importants pour bâtir un monde de coopération plus juste, plus inclusif, plus diversifié, un monde de paix bleue. Tout récemment, le Geneva Water Hub et le SIE ont travaillé avec des jeunes leaders provenant de régions diverses, d'Asie centrale, du Moyen-Orient, de l'Amérique latine, toutes des régions qui sont affectées par des conflits ou des tensions politiques et sociales en lien avec le partage et la gestion des ressources en eau. Ce travail a mené les jeunes à identifier 5 rôles majeurs qui peuvent et souhaitent jouer pour un futur de coopération et de paix, et je vais vous les présenter maintenant. Les jeunes peuvent promouvoir les avantages d'une approche inclusive, multidisciplinaire et innovante par rapport aux anciennes normes en matière de résolution de problèmes et de gestion. Ensuite, les jeunes peuvent et souhaitent apporter des idées nouvelles, crédibles et promouvoir un leadership responsable dans la prise de décision. Les jeunes spécialistes sont prêts à accélérer leur collaboration et partenariat avec les experts scientifiques. Les jeunes peuvent être des acteurs de changement et encourager leurs pairs à construire une société plus inclusive, offrant des opportunités aux moins favorisés. Les jeunes peuvent en prendre l'initiative en tant qu'acteurs non étatiques pour faciliter le dialogue et la communication entre parties prenantes sur des sujets plus sensibles. Je pense que cette expérience et cet exercice démontrent bien que les jeunes sont déjà en marche et qu'ils souhaitent continuer cette route dans un esprit de dialogue et de coopération avec l'ensemble des parties prenantes, comme le propose l'événement d'aujourd'hui. Donc, je vous souhaite un bon webinaire. Merci. Bonjour, mon nom est Laurie Fourneau, coordinatrice de programme au secrétariat international de l'eau.
Merci Laurie, on entend le début qu'on avait manqué tout à l'heure. So thank you Laurie. And let's start our first segment on South America that will address the impacts of dams and local populations and the youth mobilization. So let's start with you, Joyce. Joyce, over to you.
All righty. So, Ba'esha pa is how I would say, buen dia, bon dia, bonjour, good morning all. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm Joyce Mendez. I was born in Colombia, but my family had issues, territorial and issues regarding the violence in the country. So we emigrated and I grew up in the border of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, which is a transboundary region. We call it the triple border area. It's an area where we have two large rivers in confluence. So we have the Iguazu River, which sets the border with Brazil and Argentina, and the Paraná River, the one that I'm going to be talking about, which sets the border with Paraguay and Brazil. So for you to have a general idea and to get to know a little bit more about the region, basically, in the 1864, around till 1870, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay had a war against Paraguay, which is called the Triple Alliance War. We didn't have any good results or legacy regarding this war. So, but we had a lot issues regarding sovereignty of the territories and several territorial issues. So back in 1960s, the hydroelectrical potential of the Paraná River was known. And in the 1980s, the construction of the Itaipu Dam, a 50-50 project owned by Brazil, Paraguay, which is nowadays the second largest hydroelectrical plant in the world started being like the construction, and in 1984 was starting the energy generation in order to solve, right, like a sovereignty water border issue. So what's happening now? Where are we now? So in 2023, we're going to have the renegotiation of the water and energy revenues, and as well as some of parts of the contract of the Itaipu agreement. The question is how we, youth, how we can influence that, because that has influenced our generations and will influence our countries in how we can take part in the decision-taking process regarding our own territorial management. So I want to bring some examples of what we have been doing as youth in the region, right? Because youth acts as catalyst as well as a positive force for development when we are included into the decision-taking process. So first of all, back in 2014, I was sitting down with the Itaipu Social Environmental Division in order to propose the creation of a youth collective that attends youth in the 25 cities that had there were areas or are areas still of influence of the construction of Itaipu. In order to do this capacity building process, we didn't know where we were, like what we wanted to do and what is our roadmap. But I also proposed a bi-national youth collective, because it's not just an issue, and because it's an issue that the river is dividing us, it's actually joining us. So we created, and we actually work till nowadays in sustainability, public policies, citizenship, and as well youth participation. However, due to the change in politics in Brazil, we also started seeing that it was more focused to just Brazilian youth participation. So we created as well the Youth for Water Network in Paraguay in order to look for this youth and understand what are we doing, where is the resource in water, and to get to know the talents and the challenges that we have regarding water accessibility. At the same time, in order to tackle this question of the agreement, we started creating the environmental observatory in education in the border in order to have data to take decisions. We even developed a project with the University of Leeds, cooperating the cities in climate adaptation. But youth, we were the promoters, we were the ones, the innovators in the region. And last but not least, we also have created the Latin American Observatory on Geopolitics of Energy, focusing in Mercosur in the area. Why? Because we need to study hydropolitics. We need to study how we are going to influence, right, this agreement. And as well, I see nowadays the big picture. We have created somehow a youth hub in the region. And I see that as a personal experience, we are not the future, right? We are the present. And sometimes we are not gonna be given with spaces. We need to take those spaces. We are creative and we can make these connections that are invisible in the eyes, right, of the youth that are not so youth right now, that are not so young. But it's our responsibility in order to empower our communities and take decisions for the next steps regarding these big projects, not just in the hydroelectrical, but as well in other areas of energy. Muito obrigada, gracias. I think that right now I got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Obrigada, Joyce, indeed. Presenting the transboundary challenges around the Itaipu Dam and the youth mobilization around this issue for the present, and of what is leading now for the present, and also some perspectives for the future. I'm now turning to Alvaro, who...
Yes.
Please, the floor is yours, Alvaro. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Greetings from Washington, D.C., where jointly with the Organization of American States, we work in the Hub for the Americas of the Global Observatory of Water and Peace, a project of the Geneva Water Hub. It is an honor to participate in this closing sessions of the Geneva Peace Week. As I speak to you, Central America has been devastated by Hurricane Eta, a slow-moving hurricane like Mitch that has left already more than 60 people dead and has affected all the way from Panama to Guatemala, but primarily in northern Nicaragua and Honduras. A lot of Honduras now and the lowlands is underwater. And as you well know, a lot of the impacts of climate change are transmitted by water. I think that the intergenerational dialogue is critical because climate change, for example, is a huge liability or negative transfer to future generations. And youth has to play a key role. And the older generation has also an important role of transmitting the knowledge and hopefully the wisdom that we have accumulated through our lives, through our struggles. I am reminded of the Navajo rule, very important, is that any decision that deals with the community should look at the impact in the next 7 generations. So the youth has to be the guardians of the future generations. I have had the privilege to work in South America in the area that Joyce lives in, specifically as an inspector for the World Bank for the Yacyretá Dam, which is one of the big dams along with Itaipu. Water can play a critical role in international cooperation, but we also have many examples where it has played the opposite role. Many of these projects that come from the 70s were led during the time of the military juntas in these countries, and the communities or the youth were not consulted. So I think that, as Joyce says, there's a unique opportunity now for youth to take a more active role and to really exercise their right as a full participant in the renegotiation of these dams. These dams have created huge liabilities that have to be corrected. For example, in the case of Yacyretá, the communities were not moved out of the flooded area in time, and now there's a lot of flooding when you have high waters in the rivers, and the communities get flooded and their wells and latrines get interconnected, and it's a real mess that still has not been resolved. So new leaders like Joyce have the world in their hands. I think that we have a role to play in supporting them, in helping them exercise their rights to participate in the decision-making process and to transmit, as I said, whatever knowledge we may have accumulated and hopefully a little bit of wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you for bringing the SADC into the discussion and to mentioning this 7 generations rule. A few questions to both of you. We all read in the news that Mexico Senate has approved yesterday the ratification of the Escazú agreement. So it means that it will now enter into force. What does it mean for the youth generations and the future mobilizations and for this in this specific area? And then would like to complete my questions by asking you how can we guarantee that the local voices are taken into account in dams development, and how could you indicate also some benefits to listen to these local communities, populations?
Mm-hmm.
Should I go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joyce.
So yeah, making the link with the question regarding the Escazú agreement. Well, like Escazú agreement is an opportunity for transformation of these relationships in the different sectors in order to guarantee this environmental democracy, and as well as the human rights protection, as well as the access to information and society participation, because we see especially a lot of issues regarding safety of human and environmental right defenders. So Escazú is a way to guarantee, you know, their voices as well as their protection. And I see that regarding these projects, it's really important to also have a period for locals to give a suggestion and feedback, you know, before this getting the government clearances, and as well continuous meetings with the locals, because the locals are the ones who know the region and they understand the territory more than even the developers of the project. So local villages should have the governance as well, and to vote or not to vote for certain projects, and as well as bottom-up approaches from rural and urban areas, and people be consult with policy makers, developers in their own land. This is basically what I will say.
Yes, I agree. I think it's very important because environmental issues and human rights issues are commingled in today's world. Many environmental activists have been killed throughout the world. It is very important to increase the participation of the youth and the communities. And the only way to guarantee that is to have comprehensive environmental impact assessment from the bottom up, in which consultation with all stakeholders is a critical step. But these rights are not given, they have to be gained by the community. So we have to exercise our right to participate. Because it just doesn't happen automatically. So that's why youth and coalitions of young and old people have to join together to exercise their rights in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro. Joyce, anything you want to add in reaction to what Alvaro said?
Yeah, I was just thinking that as well, like how, like, there are several methods we have developed in order to have like public policies regarding the territory. And one of those are the participative methods, which are like meets with local and cultural traditions, because the idea is to work as well with the intercultural relationships regarding the territory, the traditions, the perspective, but as well as Dr. Umaña said, like giving this tool to people to play an active and influential part in the decision-making process. So I will also add, this is another compound, which is the intergenerational dialogue. This is so fundamental because we can have innovative ways, but we need to learn history. And our, you know, maybe you also have part of the answers that we need in order to tackle down these issues. Obrigada.
Indeed, we need to learn from history. Alvaro, you want to add? We still have a few seconds.
Well, I am very happy to see young leaders like Joyce that, you know, understand the process, are articulate, already has a lot of maturity, and I'm willing to offer our support in whatever we can for their struggle and their renegotiation. I would be honored to work with you, Joyce.
Very promising. Okay, I see we are on time, so congratulations for our two speakers, and also for who spoke at the opening of this session. And if you don't have anything to add, Joyce and Alvaro, we will move to the next session. Okay, so let's move to the next session. I am switching to French. Nous allons à présent passer au deuxième dialogue, qui lui se focalisera sur l'accès à l'eau en Afrique et comment atteindre l'objectif de développement durable numéro 6, qui est donc consacré à l'eau et à l'assainissement. Une thématique d'autant plus importante que l'on sait que l'eau est un élément essentiel pour combattre l'épidémie à laquelle nous faisons face. J'ai le plaisir de donner en premier la parole à Flamé. Donc Flamé, over to you.
Ok, merci. Je suis très content de participer à ce panel. Et surtout avec l'aîné Jean Bosco, avec qui j'ai déjà travaillé sur différents projets. Et moi, je vais aborder la question, hein, peut-être sous l'angle de la jeunesse, parce que bon, je suis sûr que Jean Bosco va l'aborder beaucoup plus en termes de réalisation et tout ça. Et pour dire en fait quel peut être l'apport des jeunes pour l'atteinte des ODD, et notamment le D6 dans un contexte de crise. Bon, d'emblée, comme on le sait tous, les jeunes constituent en Afrique la majorité de la population, et cette grande majorité-là peut constituer soit une opportunité pour le développement, mais également un danger pour le développement. Précisément dans le secteur de l'eau et de l'assainissement, pour l'atteinte de l'ODD6, l'apport des jeunes est multiple. D'une part, les jeunes constituent un vivier de main-d'œuvre pour la réalisation d'ouvrages, pour tout ce qui rentre dans le développement de l'accès à l'eau potable, mais aussi en termes de gestion. Mais encore faut-il que les jeunes puissent être orientés vers ce secteur-là, qui aujourd'hui manque d'attractivité. En tout cas, ce n'est pas présenté, le secteur de l'eau n'est pas présenté comme un secteur qui peut représenter un secteur professionnel pour les jeunes. Et en Afrique, surtout en Afrique de l'Est, aussi, il manque assez de centres de formation où les jeunes peuvent vraiment se spécialiser. Aujourd'hui, on n'a que le 2IE qui est au Burkina Faso et qui ne permet pas non plus l'accès à une certaine couche de la jeunesse parce que l'accès, les frais de formation sont assez chers. Ensuite, il faut dire que les jeunes constituent également une courroie de transmission entre les autorités, entre les dirigeants, entre les décideurs et les populations à la base. Et pour atteindre aujourd'hui les objectifs de développement durable, il faut forcément associer les populations à la base. Le premier panel disait aujourd'hui, disait tout à l'heure, qu'il faut forcément que ce pourquoi les ouvrages sont réalisés puissent être associés, puissent comprendre même ce pourquoi ces différents types